In our previous edition of The Pulse, we saw Tim Urban talk about what procrastination looks like in our brains. We have the situation with the rational decision maker, us behind the wheel, the monkey, the instant gratification monkey, the panic monster, and the whole system of procrastination that occurs with items that we have strict deadlines on. His storytelling was a very useful way for us to conceptualize the pushes and the pulls of procrastination. And near the end of his talk, Urban reminded us that this system of consistent monkey taking control, panic monster swooping in, isn't really sustainable for us in everyday life. For this takeaway tip, we're going to go over some of the ways that we can keep the gratification monkey at bay. Our hands on the wheel, eyes and sails pointed in the right direction. But, hang on, 1 second. One of our members is calling me. Hey Vic, how are you?
Hey there, Connor. I'm good.
Yeah, last time we talked, I know you were talking about filming your adventure and making your famous honey sandwich for the Back on My Feet talent show. How's that going?
Yeah, well, things sort of fell through on that. I don't really know. I have a lot of ideas. Maybe I can do next week.
I don't mean to be too pushy, but I noticed that you said kind of the same thing last week and for the past few weeks now. Just want to check in. Is everything all right? I know that you might have some other things on your plate. Maybe we can try to look forward to the future and see what's keeping you from this and if this is something that you can prioritize.
Well, come to think of it now, I haven't really done much of anything these past 2 weeks. I have a lot I want to do. I kind of want to see my friends and family, but sometimes I just end up watching Netflix or playing video games, or I get overwhelmed. I don't really buckle down and focus on anything that I want to.
Well, what do you got in the works right now?
I got this perfect plan in my mind on how to do the video and just, I don't know. My mom was a beekeeper. My dad, he sold honey. That was just their way of life. And so I'm no honey expert. And it's not like it's hard to find honey or anything. There's a store down the block that I can get my own. But I feel like if I don't get it in a more organic way, then the video is not just not going to be as interesting. I've watched hours of videos and how other bears get honey. There's Yogi Bear, there's Pooh, there's the Berenstein Bears. Everyone seems to know how to get it, but I just I don't know how to do it except for just going to the store, and I think that's kind of lame.
Vic, it sounds like you're being kind of hard on yourself. I know that you might see those other bears getting that honey, but that doesn't mean they have the only secret. I've seen you make your honey sandwiches before. They're great, and it looks like a killer recipe. Most of the time, all those bears, they go down to the store and get their honey that way too. All these shows and videos, it's just Hollywood editing, man. We all procrastinate from time to time.
You know that video that you sent about procrastination? Yeah, I feel like that instant gratification monkey's at the wheel right now.
Here, I can share some tips and some tools with you to try to maybe see if we can get back on track and help out a little bit. Let me get my notes up and we can pop right to it. There are a number of strategies that we can try for ourselves to keep that instant gratification monkey in the tree. I break it down into 3 different sorts of solutions. Here are some things to understand when we approach procrastination. Procrastination is a learned physical habit from an emotional response. It's important that we distinguish it as a habit versus a predetermined rule or behavior because it means that we can address it and change that habit. Managing our procrastination habits means knowing how we operate emotionally and recognizing the physical response. We can use this knowledge to help change our habits by adjusting our environment, adjusting our mindset, or creating structural aids. Before we dive into this, let's take some time just to recognize what isn't procrastination. Procrastination is not about the prioritization of tasks. There are some things that are just more important than others, and failing to do those less important things is not procrastinating them. Procrastination is not failing to do things outside of our capacity. If we can't speak a language, it wouldn't be procrastinating by not talking to that person. We just can't do it. We need to get someone else to help us or accept where we're at. All right, let's hit the ground running with our first section, the think section. where we need to introspect and reflect. Why do we procrastinate? Procrastination is a physical reaction to an emotional response. Things like fear, anxiety, and stress contribute to this. And these are emotions that can stick with us every time we think about or approach a certain task that we don't like or tend to procrastinate on. These emotions can lead us to have damaging mindsets like perfectionism and unrealistic expectations. Perfectionism is a prime cause for procrastination because we are setting out to pursue unattainable goals. We think we can do everything at once and do it all right the first time, but this just isn't true sometimes. And then we can self-sabotage by not starting at all. Like they say in baseball, don't let the fear of striking out stop you from stepping up to the plate. With unrealistic expectations that are too high can destroy our self-esteem when we fail. To overcome procrastination, it's essential to lower the expectations of ourselves and rely on our ability of what we can do right now, and then course correct over time. Start by reflecting on what your abilities are currently, not what you think you can do in about 2 or 3 months from now. Let's think back to Vic's situation. He wants his sandwich to be perfect, but he wanted to turn out just the same as his mother's recipe. He was afraid that he wasn't going to get the same result, so he thought maybe he wouldn't even try at all. He also had unrealistic expectations about how he was going to get his honey, comparing himself to film stars. He has some work to do on this honey obtaining later, but to get the video done on time, he needs to lower his expectations and buy some of the store-bought honey. By shifting our mindset about the task, granting us some grace, and reflecting on our current capacity, we can help reduce the fear and anxiety of the task at hand. These mindset shifts can only control the fear and anxiety of the task. Now, while we know why we might procrastinate, we still have to be able to assess when we are procrastinating. The answer to adjusting procrastination is first recognizing when you are unfocused and doing the following things to start getting in the right direction. The first is acknowledging the action using to procrastinate. Maybe that's scrolling through Instagram, watching videos on YouTube, or texting a friend. You're not doing the task that you set out to do. You're doing something else. The second thing is counting to 7. This gives you time to pause and transition to the third one, which is putting down what you're doing, making sure that you're completely stopping yourself from the action that you're using to procrastinate. Then you're going to take a sticky note or a piece of paper and just write down that action so you know these are the things that I do to procrastinate. Don't be afraid to name it. Finally, the fourth thing is focusing on one task. Minimize those distractions and make sure that those things that you put away stay away. We'll talk a little more about this later. Planning is a helpful tool for breaking down a large, daunting task and orienting the brain to be future-minded. People that are less future-minded than others tend to procrastinate more. Help set goals by tuning into our SMART goal video. For breaking things down, pause the video in a couple seconds to copy down this chart. Here's an example of also what Vic might use for his upcoming video when he's shooting. Alright, let's head on over to the do section. So we need to do things differently to keep those procrastination habits at bay and to keep that instant gratification monkey up that tree. First, let's go back to our list that we made of the tasks. How can I limit my distractions and make it harder for me to do these tasks? I might turn off my phone, put it in the corner, do not disturb, or challenge if I have music on to keep that super quiet or off completely. The next thing is accountability. Set a time to check in maybe with staff or friends and help yourself be accountable for those things that you want to get done. Next, we have environment. Make sure that you find a spot that you really enjoyed working, doesn't have many distractions, and you can feel safe in. For structure, have that daily plan in front of you and try to stick to it. You can always come back to things later and adjust, but try to stick to your initial plan so you don't spend too much time on things that don't matter all that much. Next thing is self-compassion. If at first you don't succeed, don't beat yourself up. We're allowed to make mistakes, and our self-worth is not determined by something you see as a shortcoming. Positive emotions are more powerful motivators than negative ones. The last thing is rewards. Keeping yourself motivated with rewards for your hard work is super important. For Vic, for instance, he really likes going outside, taking walks, and finding a big tree to scratch his back on. All right, great. That was a lot. Think. Procrastination comes from our emotions and habits. It can be reduced with a shift in mindset. That is, nobody's perfect, and we're adjusting expectations to our capacity. We'll almost never get things right the first time, but with practice makes perfect. Plan. It's important to be future oriented and to set realistic goals. Breaking down tasks to make things seem less daunting is going to be super important for getting started. Using this handy dandy chart can help you out. And finally, the do. Set up a system of accountability, find an environment to comfortably get the task done, make those actions you procrastinate with harder to access, practice self compassion, and don't forget to balance it out with rewards. And I should mention before we go, Back on My Feet is blessed to have a partnership with the Accenture Learning Exchange that provides these tools below to help with time management, tracking tasks, and taking initiative. Contact one of the staff members to learn more. All right, Vic, thanks for chatting today. Next week, Wednesday at noon, let's check in and see how things are going. Otherwise, you got my number. I can answer all questions between now and then.
Great. Thanks, Connor. Now it's time to keep that instant gratification monkey up in its tree.